Thank you, Fred, for joining us today on Mindstock Talk. We love the vision and what we see of your company so far in Vista Gold. It's very different in terms of location and geographical wise. Kind of been focused a little bit more on Canadian companies. And so one of the things that attracts us about you is obviously the beauty and the resources that are available in Australia. So we'd love it if you could give us a brief background of yourself and the role that you play in Vista Gold. What's the flagship at Mount Todd look like right now, and what's going on with that project?
So I'm a mining engineer. I followed my father's footsteps. I'm a third generation miner. I went to the Colorado School of Mines and have worked in underground shaft and tunnel construction, underground lead zinc mines, open pit industrial minerals. I lived in South America for 11 years. Part of that working in the gold industry, part of it working in the copper industry in Chile. Joined Vista Gold in 2006, first as Senior Vice President of Project Development. Shortly thereafter, named President and Chief Operating Officer. And then when Mike Riching retired in 2012, I was named President and CEO. It's been a very interesting journey with Vista to see a number of transitions that we've gone through. You know, you mentioned the Mount Todd project, which is our core asset. And it was, interestingly, Vista has a little bit of history in that we go back to 1983 when the company started as Granges. Granges grew from being an explorer to a producer with some operations in Nevada. In 1996, they merged with a company called DeCapo Resources and changed the company's name to Vista Gold. Late 1990s, the company shut down its operating assets, the Highcroft mine in northern Nevada, and shortly thereafter, Rick Rule approached the management team and said, this is not the time to being a producer. You should be acquiring assets in this low gold price environment. And so management of the time adopted that philosophy, and with Rick's help, they grew the resource base of the company from roughly 2.1 million ounces to over 18 million ounces through a number of acquisitions with an average cost of about 67 cents an ounce. And Mount Todd was the last one that we acquired. I joined the company just months after that transaction was completed. I've seen Mount Todd grow into the very large scale project that it is today, with 7 million ounces of reserves. You know, as we've been talking, it's located in the Northern Territory of Australia. Done a lot of work on the project to position it to be what we think is one of the leading development opportunities, not just in Australia, but globally. All of the permits, major permits for construction of the project have been acquired. Today, we're working our way through what we see in the market with producers being more interested in acquiring other producers. And we think that can't go on forever.
The stock's up a lot. So when we started following it, which is 60 cents, now it's at $1, we'll call it Canadian. Others are looking at you. Do they talk to you about the property? So some of the big guys, are they sniffing around?
3 years ago, we retained CIBC Capital Markets and their Sydney office to assist us in finding a partner for the Mount Todd project. We went through a process in the spring of 2022. We announced, and when I say process, we went through a lot of work with them to familiarize them with the project.
Right.
In the spring of 22, we announced the results of a feasibility study. And then we launched the efforts of CIBC. Just about the time marketing materials were hitting the street and they started making phone calls, inflation became the buzzword of the day. And we started hearing a lot of things like, we're not doing anything right now. We're not sure what capital costs are going to be. We'll come and we'll take a look and we'll see what happens. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we have signed a number of confidentiality agreements, somewhere in the order of 15. Okay. We've had companies come and do an immense amount of work. You know, we don't disclose who's signed confidentiality agreements, but I can say that Newcrest signed an agreement because they no longer exist. And they actually came and drilled and collected samples for metallurgical testing and undertook their own very extensive metallurgical testing program. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they validated our results. We face this on occasion, from bigger companies that, oh, we have bigger resources, we have bigger teams, we can do things better than you guys have figured out so far. And ultimately, their test work validated our test work, and they got almost identically the same results we did on recoveries and grind size and things like that. Was a very important validation. Now we've had a number of other companies come and look, and some have said, it's too big for us at 50,000 tons a day. Others have said, Australia is not our jurisdiction. We're intrigued, but we're not interested in Australia today. Others have said, we're trying to figure out where Australia fits in our portfolio. We've had a couple of companies say, we would never build it at 50,000 tons a day. One company said, can we build it at 65? And ultimately, at the end of the day, we've had several say, if we owned it, we would build it. To acquire it from you, and then with our conservative approach on costing, et cetera, and this is at a period of time when the gold price was $2,000, $2,100. It just doesn't quite pencil out. Now, I think today, if a senior producer was of a mind to be looking at a development stage project, that we could get over that last hurdle. But presently, we're still facing the headwind of producers are looking at other producers and looking for amalgamation and consolidation in the industry that way, rather than taking on the risk of developing new projects just yet.
In terms of everything that you're just explaining to us and how Australia is being undervalued and overlooked, what would you say that the Mount Todd project stands out amongst other gold projects in Australia? In terms of size, location, obviously there's other infrastructure advantages or disadvantages that come into play with it.
So Mount Todd is the second largest undeveloped gold project in Australia. De Grey's Hemi Goldmine or gold project is the only gold project that's bigger. Now the distinctions there are, is that we have already received all of our permits, and so Mount Todd is shovel ready, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on permitting at Hemi. The picture behind me is a picture of what the project area looks like. We enjoy significant infrastructure. We have paved roads to the mine site. The tailing storage facility just above my head that has capacity for 93 million tons. That's roughly a third of our current reserve. We have a freshwater storage reservoir that we capture water in during the wet season, and then it overflows. We have power lines to the site. We have a natural gas pipeline to the site. As far as accessibility, the Mount Todd project is located about 30 minutes north of Catherine, the town of about 14,000 people, and about 45 minutes south of Pine Creek, which is considerably smaller. And we're only about 2.5, 3 hours from Darwin. So as far as accessibility, Mount Todd is got to be one of the more easily accessible large-scale gold projects outside of perhaps Kalgoorlie. We enjoy some very distinct advantages in that regard, that money we don't have to spend, that we can approach the design and construction of the project in a little bit different way.
So is the project big enough for a player, say a Barrick?
With 7 million ounces of reserves, the project has been designed at 50,000 tons per day. And with that, the annual average gold production over the first half of the life of the project would be just a little under 500,000 ounces of gold per year. It would make it Australia's year by year, it varies a little bit, but between third and fifth largest gold producer in the country. So I would think the answer to your question is yes, it certainly has the scale that could be attractive to a large company.
So the big player one day looks at you. Stock's trading at $1 today, roughly, give or take, when we put out this video. We're long the stock at 60 cents. We think it goes to $3 and higher. What do you see?
Certainly, we think that there's room for more growth than you do.
Excellent.
When we look at the intrinsic value, just talking economics for a second, the feasibility study that we updated in the first of this year, we took that 2022 feasibility study, refreshed the economics to account for the inflation that we've seen in our industry, republished the results. We used an $1,800 gold price, which today would just seem ludicrously conservative. But at that point, the NPV of the project was $1.2 billion. At today's price, the NPV of the project is $3.1 billion. And if you just say, we think it's going to go to $3,000 an ounce, the NPV of the project becomes $4 billion. And we're talking US dollars here. So, I mean, when we look at it and say, is there room for growth in this? Absolutely. I think that right now Mount Todd is a little bit overlooked. We've had a nice run the past couple of weeks, and since the end of June, as you indicated. But I think this is the start. I think that people are just kind of starting to reawaken to Mount Todd, and I think that there's something else that's starting to come on people's radar screens, and that is that while we've designed Mount Todd as a very large project, we have demonstrated with an internal scoping study that Mount Todd could be built at a scale, instead of 17 million tons a year, something in the order of 4 to 6 million tons per year. And with that, the CapEx drops from a little over $1 billion to something less than 400 million. We're going to be kicking off a feasibility study here in the next couple of months to look at this initially smaller scale project that would produce 150 to 200,000 ounces of gold per year instead of almost 500,000 ounces a year, and preserve the option to be able to expand it at some point in time in the future. But to demonstrate there's a very strong possibility to get it built for much less money than what people have in mind, given its size.
That begs a couple questions, especially for me. I'm very new in this industry. As an investor, I represent people that don't know anything. So given all that information that you're playing out to us and that you're sharing with us, how would you say that market conditions and the gold outlook is for what you're trying to pursue, and how would that be advantageable to the person that's coming into the market as an investor that might be looking at your company?
We've been talking about, opportunities for a larger company. Has there been any interest? Let me just paint the picture this way. The number of companies that can write billion-dollar checks to build projects is a relatively small number. The number of companies, especially in the Australian gold mining sector, that can write $400 million checks is substantially larger. And so the strategy of looking at a project that has a smaller initial build, it becomes more attractive to a larger number of companies. And so whether we're successful in completing a joint venture to jointly develop Mount Todd with another mid-tier producer, or whether we ultimately get taken out, I think that demonstrating the viability of the project at a smaller scale increases the probability of this happening. Now, when you look at our corporate website or our corporate slide deck, we in the last month, S&P Global Market Intelligence published some information highlighting the number of major gold discoveries made over the last 3.5 decades. And they classify a major gold discovery as something bigger than 2 million ounces. In the 1990s, the last decade of the last century, there were 182 projects discovered that fit that criteria. In the next decade, the first decade of the 2000s, there was 100 120. From 2010 to 2019, there was less than 50. And so far this decade, from 2020 through today, there's been 5. And so it's a very stunning statistic that we have gone from, in 35 years, discovering a lot of large-scale projects to discovering very few. And so we think that Mount Todd is going to fill a niche at some point. We can't continue as an industry producing 3,000 metric tons of gold every year, but not finding major projects. We can't sustain production off of small projects. And so projects with Mount Todd will become more attractive. What we're striving to do is just demonstrate that Mount Todd has what we call optionality. It doesn't have to be built at 50,000 tons a day. It doesn't have to be built at 12,000 tons a day. It could be built in a scenario where you start at one scale and in a period of time expand it to get to the other. And then on top of that, there's tremendous exploration potential at Mount Todd. So we think that Mount Todd ultimately will be one of those large-scale, long-lived gold producers in Australia.
So our young investor crowd, they don't understand exactly how you guys work in the mining business. We're trying to tell them and explain to them that you find property, you find resource, you prove it, and then you look for either a way to take the stock higher and raise capital and build a mine, which is pretty tough, or find the buyer that's so big that they need it. Your property sounds like one that's getting closer to when the big guy needs it. So our young investors who buy the stock at 75 cents, hoping that they could triple it or quad it or more, are hoping that you as a manager and your management team can actually figure out how to do that.
But that is what happens. Our industry, we classify ourselves as, explorers, developers, or producers, and the explorers are out there hoping to make that lucky discovery, that turns out to be, one of these plus 2 million ounce major projects. Developers like Mount Todd are companies that a unique set of skills on the engineering side, metallurgy, where we try and add value to the project through additional drilling, completing the designs, figuring out how we're going to get the gold from being in the ground to being in a doré bar that can be sold to a refinery. And we start dealing with governments and local stakeholders, and we deal with the soft issues, the social issues. In addition to the technical issues, we start advancing, government authorizations, and ultimately with the idea, as you've mentioned, of either getting it to the point that you either make a decision to build it yourself, or you create a product that somebody else just has to have. And we're at that interesting junction where we could march down a path of, with a partner developing Mount Todd, or outright sell it to somebody else who it fits their portfolio, their production pipeline. We're very focused on, and this, I think, something that investors need to understand. We're very focused on minimizing dilution. We have 122 million shares issued and outstanding, which for a company that's been around as long as Vista has is quite a small number of shares issued. We raise money infrequently. We try to be very, very efficient with what we do with that money. What that does is it creates the opportunity for the kind of increases in the share price that you've mentioned. You increase your market cap by $100 million, and for some companies that would be, a multiple for the shareholders of less than 1. For Vista, just realizing a stair step of an additional $100 million in value for the project would be almost a double. And so that's one of the advantages of, some smaller companies like Vista, where management are also important shareholders, and we focus on doing things that create value for shareholders.
How would a shareholder be able to easily access getting in touch with you guys?
Certainly, there's a lot of publicly available information. We participate in a number of conferences. From our website, individuals can sign up to receive, copies of our press releases. On the website, they'll have access to the contact information for Pamela Sully, our Vice President of Investor Relations. But occasionally, she sets up a call with me, and I'm happy to take, that 10 or 15 minutes and visit with people about, what it is we do, how we do it, why we do it, what the Mount Todd project is, and what it's all about. We're doing more and more of these kinds of interviews where, we could call it the rising generation of investors turn more to podcasts as a source of their information, and we're embracing that. And so there's, but I would say that, first stop should be the website. There's a wealth of information. All of the podcasts, the webcasts are available there. Pam's information is there, and also information about what conferences we'll be attending. Some retail investors are more sophisticated than others. We will be at the New Orleans conference in November. Obviously, we'll be at PDAC. Pam's predecessor got us just a great booth location. When you first walk in the door to the PDAC hall, our booth is just one booth to the left as you walk in the front door. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways to reach out to us, but, an email or a phone call to Pam, and she'll turn you on to the people you need to talk to get your answers.
I'm not sure what your view is on the price of gold. Let's say it goes to 3,500. How does the stock look?
It's pretty amazing what's happened in the last week as gold has broken out above 2,600. Price of gold goes to 3,000. That our share price will be. So you want this in U.S. or Canadian dollars?
We'll take it in Canadian.
Just for, I mean, I would say actually,
or both.
I would say U.S. Our viewership is heavily between U.S. and Canada.
I think that if the price of gold goes to $3,000 an ounce, that our share price is between $1.50 and $2 U.S.
Now you have enough cash to carry on for a while.
We do. We have $20 million in cash at the end of the second quarter.
Wow, that's like a billion Canadian.
Not quite.
Okay, it's not, but it's a lot of money.
So you guys can drill,
That's so funny.
manage, produce, develop this property properly, and turn around and say to some giant that comes by, "Oh yeah, we're here." How big is the property?
We talk about two different areas. We talk about the boundaries of the mining license, which is about 56 square kilometers. And that's the area within which we're authorized to undertake all of our activities to develop and produce metals from the mine. Surrounding that, we have a nearly 1,600 square kilometer exploration package. So the project area is quite large. We cover, our exploration licenses cover 2 structural corridors that are known hosts to gold deposits. The project is located at the south east end of the Pine Creek district, a gold producing district in Australia with over 100 years of production history. We control most of that geologically is called the Pine Creek geosyncline. And so there's the project area is quite large. We talk about, the reserves at 7 million ounces. We have 9.4 million ounces of resource. That's all within the mining licenses. We've drilled just a few holes on the exploration licenses because we've really been focused on this core of the project. And yet we do grassroots exploration, and we identify targets, and we've done geophysics and soil samples and mapping, and ultimately to appropriately explore the exploration license, it's going to take tens of millions of dollars spread over 5 or 6 years. And we're just not at the point of making that kind of investment when we've got a project that's already very large.
So when you began looking at it, gold was what, 1200?
When I first joined Vista Gold, the gold price was in the 400s.
And so an investor can look at what you guys do as you keep proving what the property is. The upside too is the price of the metals. And of course there's the metals that come with it.
The change in gold price is a huge factor for us. You may have seen the press release that we put out this week. The exploration activities. We're right now drilling. We call it the South Cross Lode. It's an ore chute that projects off to the northeast from the Batman deposit. It's a completely different style of mineralized host than what we see at the Batman deposit. In fact, instead of encountering the Batman deposit, which is the Mount Todd project, is a sheeted vein system. In other words, we have between 200 and 300 meters of horizontal width of rock that's been by little fine veins. They vary in width from millimeters to maybe 10 centimeters, but they occur every 10, 15 centimeters, almost continuously across 200 to 300 meters of width. The South Cross Lode is a little bit farther from the intrusive. It's not as altered. And we're seeing wider veins. In the drilling that we're doing, we intersected on two adjacent sections, one intercept that was a half a meter at 50 grams per ton. And then 50 meters away, we intersected another vein, which possibly is the same vein, that was a meter wide at almost 26 grams per ton. So we've got this very large, sub-gram deposit with, a huge amount of ounces. And we've just made this discovery, we just started drilling this other chute that may be much more amenable to an underground mining operation at some point in the future. So that's very exciting to us, and it's going to generate some very interesting news flow over the coming months as drilling continues there. And I'm certainly excited to see that because it's a change. It's something new for us at Mount Todd, and our geologists are still trying to put the pieces together and figure out how it all ties together. Those are kinds of numbers we've not reported at Mount Todd ever. So this is kind of exciting for us.
One last question as we're going to close things up. As two investors that are super interested, not only visiting Australia, but like very interested in your company, the vision, the things going forward. If we were to visit your property in Australia on foot, what should we be looking for?
You see the what the project looks like behind me. This is a grass field site. One of the things that we would do is we would take you out to the north end of the pit so that you could actually see the geology, so that you could see this sheeted veins. You could just stand there and look at the pit wall and just see these little veins that just run kind of cutting diagonally across the face on the north end of the project. One of the things that we would talk to you about is our relationship with the Aboriginal people.
That is huge for us. As we started to enter this market, we've talked about incessantly, but we've noticed that it's a very complicated political, but it's also a relationship. And the relationship translate not just to the mining and like the political stuff that's involved with permits and stuff like that, but we're starting to notice that a lot of investors that we speak with in our own networks, they absolutely effing care about it now, like moving forward. So I'm glad that you said something about that. Thank you.
I mean, the Jawoyn Aboriginal people own all of the land in the project area, and we have an agreement with them, and we work very closely with them. I meet with their board of directors on a quarterly basis. And so their support for the project is immensely important. One of the things that we would talk about, we were talking about the amount of rain we get at Mount Todd. Well, 5 feet of rain over a 5-month period is a lot of water to have to deal with. And so We have a water management program. We inherited a challenge. The waste rock dump has, before we got involved, started generating acid rock drainage. And we capture that and we store it, and then we treat it, and we discharge clean water under a discharge permit from the NT, the Northern Territory EPA. And so, things like, our relationship with stakeholders, especially the Aboriginal people, we would talk about our environmental stewardship and the things that we're doing. The way our safety record right now, our people have achieved over 1,000 consecutive days without a lost time accident. We would talk about, while we're standing there on the top end of the pit looking at the geology, we'd talk about what happened there in the 1990s with the previous operation and what we've done since then to address the operating challenges that they faced. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I would hope that you would walk away with the feeling that the Mount Todd project today is a totally different project than was operated in the 1990s. And it's being operated by a company who places a high priority on the safety of its people, its environmental stewardship, and its relationship with stakeholders, especially with our friends, the Jawoyn people.
Well, that just melts
Incredible.
my heart. And any closing thoughts?
I have a personal relationship with the Jawoyn leaders. I meet with them on a quarterly basis. Just kind of an interesting note. I live in a rural part of southeast of Denver, Elbert County. So we have a flagpole. We as Americans like to fly a flag, and I have a flagpole. And I always fly two flags. I fly the American flag, and then I fly either the Colorado state flag or the Gadsden flag. And I asked the Jawoyn in one meeting. I says, I showed him a picture, and I said, I'd really love to get a Jawoyn flag, and if there's a day that's important for the Jawoyn, I would fly it on your day. And they said, hold on a second. And their CEO got up, ran to his office, came back with this flag. We took pictures of all of us holding the flag. And May 31st is their day of incorporation. It's kind of like their birthday.
Yeah.
And so on May 31st, I flew the Jawoyn flag on my flagpole, sent them pictures. They were thrilled to death. The next meeting after that, I walked into their conference room, the usual greetings and whatnot. And Lisa Mumbin, who is the chair of the Jawoyn Association Corporation, she said, "Come here, Fred. I need a hug." And that was a first. She's never done it to me before. The others from our team that were there were just kind of in awe. They said, "We've never seen the Jawoyn show affection like that."
Calling all savvy investors in mining and resources. Seeking the inside track on Vista Gold? Look no further than minestalkers.com. Visit for the insights and stay for the gains. Seize the opportunity and explore the magic at minestalkers.com. Uncover new investment possibilities today. Don't forget to hit the bell below to subscribe and then like and share this video. Let's get the word out there.